Hello everyone, Find Me in LA here. Hope y'all are having a wonderful day so far. In this video, I wanted to do something a little different from my usual Horror Nights fare and talk about some scary movies. So every year, I always try to check out as many movies as I can, especially ones that are overlooked or underrated. And I'm a huge horror movie guy, and whenever there's a movie or two that the horror community is talking about and there's a big buzz about, I usually check it out for myself. This year, I thought it'd be really cool to rank all the new horror movies that I've seen in 2023. Now, before we get into the ranking, I want to preface this real quick. I have not seen every single horror movie that came out this past year. There are a couple big ones like Scream 6 or Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, that just movies like that I didn't get a chance to get mostly because I don't have the time or I just don't have the interest. I mean, come on, I really don't expect Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey to be a personal favorite of mine. In total, I have watched 16 horror movies, or just movies that fall into the horror genre that were released this year. And I'm gonna rank them all from worst to best. So without further ado, let's get right into it. At number 16, my least favorite horror movie that came out this year, it's gonna be The Exorcist Believer. Yeah, it's just a horrible legacy sequel from the guy who brought us Halloween Ends. It was just something that I was not looking forward to, and the trailer didn't really convince me. When I walked through the maze at Horror Nights, I thought, okay, maybe I'm a little bit more really curious to check it out. And I watched it, and it kind of sucked. Is it a competently made movie? Yeah. The makeup effects are kind of cool, the performances are alright, and it's shot well. It doesn't look bad, it doesn't look weird or anything like that. It's a competently made movie. Why I don't like it so much is because it's just so boring. I hate using this phrase, but this movie was kind of pointless. What was the whole point of his existence other than just to make money and cash in on the Exorcist franchise? This movie doesn't really have anything to say. All the new ideas that it brings up, it just was executed very poorly. For example, when they try to bring in new religions near the third act of the film to do the actual exorcism, it's a pretty interesting idea, but the thing is it's so ham-fisted, the way they bring all together, the Avengers teaming up together, oh, it's the power of friendship and neighborhood that's gonna bring us all together and defeat this evil. It was just so weird. And then you bring in the characters from the original and they just completely wasted them. They were just there so they could put them in the trailer so they could get more butts in the seats. It doesn't even try. I mean, I was expecting them to be just flat out terrible, just trying too hard. But in my eyes, they didn't try hard enough. I guess they were too scared to tarnish the legacy of the original, so they wanted to do a more mellow, slow burn type of feel. But they didn't even try to make it scary. It was just during the first half of the movie, you wouldn't have any idea that these little girls acting crazy are possessed. They were just maybe having PTSD from when they were missing. There were no hints of anything demonic happening going on. It wasn't it was just so weird. It was just so odd. So yeah, Exorcist Believer was just so dull, so uninteresting, and just so unnecessary. And that's why it's my least favorite horror film of the year. At number 15 is gonna be Skinnamarink. Now this is a very love or hate film. Some people say it's one of the greatest of the year, one of the greatest horror movies of all time actually, and then other people say that it's just straight up trash, it's just a miserable movie going experience, that they will never watch this piece of trash again. For me, I'm kind of in the middle of it, more leaning towards the dislike camp. I do like the ideas that they were going for. I do like how they were trying out different storytelling techniques by just having little to no dialogue, and the dialogue that they do have is just very indistinguishable sometimes. There are points where they added subtitles because they knew people wouldn't understand what people were saying. They're just focusing more on creating just an atmosphere with just a weird dark lo-fi film grainy, just dark, barely indistinguishable imagery. Now there were a couple of moments where it was actually pretty effective. There were a couple of moments where I was kind of holding my breath for a second, and it was kind of making my skin crawl. But for the most part, I was just getting very impatient. If you have a low attention span, or if you're a kind of moviegoer that likes just non-stop action, then this movie is not for you at all. Again, I appreciate the directors trying to do something different, and because of that artistic merit, I do prefer it over Exorcist Believer. But other than that, it's probably a movie that I would never watch again. Number 14 is going to be a movie called It's a Wonderful Knife. Now, this is probably a more overlooked movie that is currently on Shudder right now if you guys want to check it out for yourselves. So basically, it's following with the trend of the modern like horror comedy slashers that come out today, you know, like Happy Death Day or Freaky, or it's like a typical like comedy slasher, but there's like a gimmick to it. With Freaky, it was like the gimmick was Freaky Friday, and with Happy Death Day, the gimmick was Groundhog's Day. The gimmick with this film is they're basically taking the plot of It's a Wonderful Life. So what this movie is about is that the main character of the movie, she stops a serial killer one Christmas night. And then a year later, she suffers from the repercussions of that. All of her friends died that night, and then just all of a sudden, like, people just want to forget about it. They just want to move on from that stuff, and she doesn't really care for that. And her boyfriend is cheating on her, and like her life just sucks. Like, she doesn't like her life. So she just looks up at an aurora borealis, or I think I'm pronouncing that right, and she just wishes that she never existed, that she was never even born. So she gets transported into a universe where she never existed, which means the serial killer that she stopped that Christmas night is still on the loose because nobody was there to stop them. So in order for her to get back to her own universe, she has to kill the serial killer in that universe. The plot of the movie sounds a lot more interesting than what the actual movie is. There were a lot of great ideas here, but I think if they were handled by a different writer or a different director, I think we would have gotten a much better movie. But the actual final product that we have now is kind of not the greatest. Not terrible, but not the greatest. They try to do attempts at comedy, but the thing is, nothing funny is being said. Like, it's shot and edited like a joke was supposed to be said, but what they're saying is not funny at all. And there's not really much suspense. It's not really that scary. So if it's not scary and if it's not funny, then it's just like kind of weird and awkward. You're just like sitting there just saying like, oh, okay, I just want the movie to be over already. Justin Long is in this movie, and everybody loves Justin Long, right? He's really bad in the movie. His acting is terrible. He plays the mayor of the town that this movie is set in, and he's just doing like this weird portrayal of this character. He's got like a blonde wig, and he's got like the bluest of blue eye contacts, and he has like a really bad tan job, like as if the Donald Trump allegory wasn't obvious enough. And he talks in this weird soft-spoken southern accent, just like this. Hi, honey child, I'm Justin Long. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year, one and all. Like, it's just so weird. Like, I think it was just less of him being a bad actor, because he's not a bad actor at all. I think it was just poorly miscast. But like I said, it's not a terrible movie. It's got some okay kills. The killer design is pretty cool. And yeah, overall, it was just a decent watch. Again, it's on Shudder right now if you want to check it out for yourself. Hopefully you guys enjoy it more than I did. Number 13. It breaks my heart to put this movie this low on this list, but here we are. It's gonna be Insidious The Red Door. Now, I love the first two Insidious movies, so I was really looking forward to this new one that was gonna bring back those original actors and the original characters. I have a love-hate relationship with this movie. I love that we got to revisit these characters, and they do a really good job with portraying those characters like 10 years after the events of the first two movies. I like the whole father and son like drama that's going on in the movie, like the whole family drama, and how like them like getting their memories wiped, just like how it affects them, and I do like the themes of like how forgetting your past can sometimes do more harm than good. So yeah, like the family drama I was really digging. What I don't like about the movie is that it's not very scary. There are a couple of tense moments here and there, but other than that, there's no like remarkable or like notable jump scares in the movie, which is what the Insidious movies are most famously known for. So Insidious, while not terrible, just completely forgets to be scary most of the time. Now these next two films I'm going to discuss, I enjoy them like around the same level. I think they're on par with each other, but I had to give one of these movies a slight edge, and I think I can confidently say that my number 12 is Five Nights at Freddy's. Now this is probably on a lot of people's worst of 2023 list, not just in horror movies, but like just in movies this year in general. And I gotta say, some of the hate is pretty undeserved. Is it a perfect movie? Hell no. It's definitely got some issues. I really don't appreciate how 50% of the movie is just literally Josh Hutcherson sleeping. That's literally what half of the movie consists of. And because of that, the movie does have some pacing issues. But other than that, it's not that bad. Your enjoyment level of the movie does help if you know the general Five Nights at Freddy's lore or not. If you're a more casual moviegoer that knows little to nothing about Five Nights at Freddy's and you walk into the movie wanting to know more about this world, it's kind of confusing and it's kind of like weird, and you kind of like are confused about like why certain cameos get like a round of applause in the theater. So yeah, I just wish the Five Nights at Freddy's movie in general was like a more inclusive movie going experience for non-Five Nights at Freddy's enjoyers. But other than that, it's not that bad. It's still a decent, entertaining watch. It's one of those movies where if it's raining outside and you're in the mood to watch a little cozy, comfort horror movie and you go through the streaming services and then Five Nights at Freddy's shows up, you watch it. It's that kind of movie. And there's not that there's anything wrong with that. But yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's, definitely overhated. Probably the most overhated movie of the year. Now, what is this other movie that I had to give the slight edge over Five Nights at Freddy's? Well, it's none other than Megan. At the start of the year, Megan was like the big talk of the town, one of the more anticipated movies of that year. I watched it later in the year, and I liked it. It was a pretty decent movie. Again, on par with Five Nights at Freddy's. This movie knows exactly what it is. It is campy as all hell. It does not take itself seriously. I do like the doll, and I do like a little bit of the themes and the messages about children getting emotionally detached to technology and like their toys and stuff. Sadly, I didn't watch the unrated cut. I watched the one that was shown in theaters, but from what I heard, the unrated cut is just no different. They just added a couple more F-bombs and a couple more shots of blood. So I guess I'm not really missing out on that. But yeah, it's a decent time. Again, just like Five Nights at Freddy's, it's one of those movies that you watch like on Netflix or Amazon Prime when it's raining outside and you don't want to like invest too much into the movie and you just want to have it as like background noise. Yeah, it's that kind of horror movie. Number 10 is going to be a little movie called Cobweb. Now, nobody went to go really see this one because it got released into theaters, but it was released in the same weekend as Barbenheimer. So yeah, that explains why nobody went to go see it. But it was one of those overlooked movies that the horror community would not shut up about. Like, oh, hey, have you seen Cobweb? Be sure to check out Cobweb. Cobweb is so underrated. You gotta check it out. It's so good. It's so good. So I went to go check it out for myself, and it was a bit overhyped for me. Don't get me wrong, I still really like this movie. Without giving too much away, the movie is about a little boy who hears noises inside of his walls. So he tells his parents like, oh hey, there's noises in my walls. And then the parents keep telling him like, no, you're dreaming, it's probably all in your imagination. And the parents are like all sus about it though. That's all I'll say about the plot of the movie. From there on, it's like a whole wild story with twists and turns and everything. I really like the performances from the child and the parents. I was really captivated because of their performances. It's set during Halloween, and you definitely get those Halloween vibes. The issues that I have with this movie, however, were the twists. I kind of saw where the story was gonna go, and like the ending itself just kind of like ended like abruptly. It was like, oh, okay, the credits are rolling. Oh, wow, that's really sudden. And like the big threat, without giving too much away, is kind of like, oh, well, that's it? Like, oh, okay. My number 9 is gonna be Renfield. Now, the trailers look absolutely terrible for this movie, but I just watched it later in the year, and it turns out it's actually not that bad. It's a pretty entertaining watch. It was surprisingly a lot more gorier than I thought it was gonna be, although there is a lot of CGI blood flying everywhere, but a lot of the gore is pretty practical as well. And there's a lot of cool practical effects, like prosthetic makeup going on with Nicolas Cage's Dracula, which is really cool. And just by the way, Nicolas Cage's Dracula is chef's kiss. He's worth the price of admission alone. He does really good. But that's not to say that he overshadows Renfield. Renfield in the movie is really good. I thought Nicholas Hoult did a pretty good job, you know, giving his own like quirky interpretation of the character. Very like Victorian, old-timey person that is fit into like a fish out of water into the modern world. I thought he played that part pretty well. Only reason why this movie is not higher on the list is because it does have that weird, quirky MCU type humor where it was just like, well, that just happened. Like, that kind of, like, humor. There's a lot of it in this movie. But, I mean, like, the people that were making this movie, I know they weren't trying to set out to make the next comedy masterpiece. They were just trying to make a fun, dumb, horror comedy movie. And I believe they delivered that in spades, for the most part. Number 8 is gonna be When Evil Lurks. Now, this is actually a foreign film, and it's another movie that's on Shudder, so if you want to check it out for yourself, go ahead and check it out. It's about a guy who's possessed by a demon, but the thing is, he's like all bloated into literally like a big ball of pus. And the thing is, for the evil to possess you, it has to spread like a disease. So it's a really cool, unique take on demonic possession. So just like the evil just spreading like germs, like demonic cooties, basically. So like our main character, he like goes far away from the land. He has to like try to help out like people like that are really close to him, like nearby in town. He takes off all his clothes and burns it down so he doesn't want to catch any of the demonic cooties. It's wild, but the real reason why people are talking about this movie is because of the shock value. There are a lot of moments where they're just like so brutal and so gory and so like just flat out disturbing. You want to know how disturbing it is? There are toddlers that get their brains eaten. Little toddlers, brains getting chewed up. Yeah, so if you're squeamish, if you're the kind of person that doesn't like seeing kids or animals getting killed in movies, this is not for you. I do not recommend this one. But if that's more of your jam. If you want to see that dark demonic stuff, then go ahead, give it a shot. For me personally, I like the unique take on the demonic possession, like I said, and also a lot of cool practical effects in here. I liked all the makeup and stuff and all the gore effects. But what ruins the movie for me is the main character. He makes so many stupid decisions that just flat out infuriated me. And I guess that was the point of the whole movie. You know, like play stupid games, win stupid prizes, because he does suffer the repercussions for all the bad decisions that he makes in the movie. But still, like, it's just, why would I want to watch that? So yeah, while I will say objectively it's probably more better made than like the rest of the movies on the top of the list, but this is the one that I would probably like rewatch less often. I would probably rewatch Renfield more than this movie. Not because I can't stomach the violence, but because like I see it as more of like a one and done experience. Number 7 is gonna be a small little indie movie called Dark Harvest. Every Halloween, a monster by the name of Sawtooth Jack arises from the ground and starts trying to kill people and stuff, right? And then all the teenage boys in the town, they got locked up for 3 days straight before Halloween with no food or no water or anything. They're just locked in the rooms for 3 days straight. And then on Halloween night, they get released so that way they're like ravenous and hungry and just like angry. That gives them more motivation to try to kill Sawtooth Jack. And whoever successfully kills Sawtooth Jack gets to win like a grand prize. And this happens like every single year. A new Sawtooth Jack monster arises, a teenage boy kills them, they win a prize, and then just watch, rinse, and repeat every single Halloween. But in the Halloween that this movie is set in, a young greaser boy tries to participate in the tradition, even though last year his brother was the one that won the grand prize. So technically he's not even eligible to be a part of this whole Sawtooth Jack tradition. But he's still, you know, knowing how rebellious of a greaser he is, he's gonna still try to do it. And then over the course of the movie, he starts to unravel a bunch of mysteries about the town and Sawtooth Jack and this whole tradition and how corrupt this town is. It's a really cool, fun ride. Again, it's a little small independent horror movie, so the low budget is like very apparent. Like there's like CGI blood everywhere, and the camera work is not the best. It's very amateurish. Some of the acting is really bad, especially from the sheriff character. There's literally a moment in the movie where he's like holding someone at gunpoint. He's like, "Freeze! Get your hands on the air now!" Like he literally makes grunting noises like he's going Super Saiyan or something. It's just like, oh my god, bro, what is he doing? You're like in a totally different movie. But other than that, very fun movie. I do definitely see myself rewatching this often. I have no idea what streaming service it's on right now, but look up Dark Harvest on like Amazon or something. Go check it out. It's a really fun time. Number 6 is going to be No One Will Save You. Now, this is a Hulu exclusive, so if you have Hulu, go check it out immediately for yourself. Basically, what this movie is about a young woman who's very introverted. Very rarely does she leave the house. The only time she leaves her house is when she wants to get stuff for her little hobbies that she does inside of her house. And then one night, an alien breaks into her house. And then she beats up the alien and manages to kill it. But then the next day, some really weird stuff happens. I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, it's crazy. And she can't call the police. She can't call for her neighbors for help because basically the whole town just hates her. And then near the end of the movie, you see why. But over the course of the movie, it's like you unravel a bunch of mysteries and a bunch of her backstory. And then you see all this weird, thrilling alien action. It's a really fun time. It's a really fun time. It feels like something out of the Twilight Zone. Check it out if you haven't already. It's on Hulu. No One Will Save You. We are now at the top 5, y'all. And my number 5 is going to be Evil Dead Rise. Now, for a while, for some reason, I've been putting off this movie for a while. Like, I wasn't in a rush to see it. But ever since they announced the Evil Dead Rise maze at Halloween Horror Nights, I'm like, oh, God, now I have to watch the movie so I know what's going on in the maze. And I watched it, and it's really fun. It's a really good Evil Dead movie. I like the change in setting in this one. Instead of just the usual cabin in the woods, it's actually a Los Angeles high-rise apartment. And there are some cool moments as to how the family in the movie can't escape from the high-rise apartment building. So like the stairs are all crumbled because of an earthquake that happened earlier, and the elevator doesn't work, and they literally can't leave their apartment because in the hallways there's like a bunch of like demonic stuff going on. All the Deadite horror action is really cool. I like the cool makeup effects and like all the cool bloody gore effects. I thought was really cool. Only reason why it's at number 5 and not higher is because some of the acting and some of the dialogue is a bit weird and off-putting. The characters in this movie, they literally get like their hand stabbed by like a giant shard of glass, and then another character gets stabbed in the heart with a kitchen knife, and they're just like, Like, I guess, like, they're in shock, which is more of, like, a realistic approach of, like, getting stabbed, but, like, if I would've gotten stabbed, I would've like, "Ah!" But I mean, like, that's just me. Other than that, like, it's a really fun movie. My number 4, honestly, has the potential to even go up on the list upon rewatch. I feel like if I rewatch it, I'm gonna enjoy it a lot more. And that's gonna be Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. If you guys have seen the Grindhouse movies, you're probably familiar with the history of this movie, that Eli Roth made, like, a fake movie trailer like years in advance before this movie even like came to fruition, and then years later the movie finally became a real thing, and the final product is actually a lot of fun. I really love the kills in here. They're super like gory, and it's all practical too. A little CGI blood puddles here and there, but other than that, like, it's 95% practical effects, which I thought was really awesome. I like the killer of John Carver. The teenage characters are fine. I mean, nothing to write home about. Most of them are just like plain old slasher cannon fodder, which, I mean, like, this movie was made to be like a cheesy slasher, so characters not being the greatest didn't really bother me that much, because like slasher movies are most famously known for having like really bad, poorly written teenage characters. Although I will say this about the teenage characters, they're probably like the most accurate portrayal of like Gen Z teenagers that I've seen in like a mainstream movie. It didn't come off as cringy, it felt like natural. But yeah, overall, it was a really fun movie, and I do highly recommend it if you're a big horror hound. Number 3 is gonna be Totally Killer. This is exclusively on Amazon Prime. This was released during the same weekend as The Exorcist Believer, and this is obviously like a lot better by a landslide. This is another one of those modern comedy slasher movies, kind of like It's a Wonderful Knife, but the gimmick here is Back to the Future. So basically what the movie is about is that there was a serial killer that killed a bunch of girls back in the 80s, and then on present day, he strikes back and he kills the mom of our main character. And then the main character's friend successfully makes a time machine. So she goes into the time machine and she actually goes back in the 80s, back when the original murders took place. And then she manages to find her mom as a teenager. So again, it's like typical Back to the Future stuff. And then our main character sees this as an opportunity to actually stop the original murders before they happen. So it's a really cool, fun concept for a slasher. When I was talking about It's a Wonderful Knife, I mentioned that they attempted to do some comedy bits, but it wasn't funny at all. This one actually had its funny moments. It's funny to see this like Gen Z, SJW, chronically online teenager go back to the 80s and react to all this stuff that hasn't really aged well. Not just in political correctness, but like stuff with like society's tolerance in weed. Like, they see people smoking weed back in the 80s and like it's literally just like grass and dirt. Like, our tolerance has like evolved over the years. I thought that was pretty funny. Now, at the beginning of the movie, I was very curious to see how it would pan out, because if the main character is involved in the past and if she's trying to stop the murders and she's successful, then there's not gonna be much tension. But because of her involvement and the events that take place, some of the events actually alter and they change. Like, some people get killed in a different way, or victim A and victim B are actually like, or their roles are reversed. So like a lot of stuff like that, without getting too much into spoilers, it's really cool. It was really interesting. It was a really cool way to keep the tension into a premise like that. So yeah, if you haven't seen Totally Killer, check it out. It's on Amazon Prime. Definitely worth your time. Not Exorcist Believer. Just watch that. It's really cool. Number 2 is gonna be Saw X. Now, ever since this movie came out, a lot of people have been talking about it, like, oh my god, it's the best one since the original, the best sequel ever. And then all of a sudden, everyone started getting excited for Saw again, and they were looking forward with the new movies that just recently got announced. And then all this buzz about Saw just got me thinking, I never actually sat down and watched a single Saw movie in one sitting. I've seen bits and pieces of of the sequels, but like I've never watched one single movie in one sitting, let alone the whole series. And I decided to change that. So for the past couple months, I've been binge watching all of the Saw movies. I think the first 3 Saw movies are really good, definitely in the top 5 in the whole series. And my least favorite is probably Jigsaw. It's just so dull and just like, it had no sauce. It didn't have the sauce that the original Saw movies had. Like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but like, it was just so dull and boring. It had nothing new to say. Saw 6 and Spiral, the one with Chris Rock, those are 2 Saw movies that I actually think have some merit and I think are actually pretty decent. The rest of the Saw sequels, I can take or leave. Like, they're pretty and much the same levels of mid. So when I finally reached to Saw X, I was really looking forward to seeing what all the big hubbub is about. And at first, I was pretty confused because like I didn't know where it was going. Because with Saw X, it's not like a traditional Saw movie where it's like, one big mystery plot going on with like a bunch of detectives trying to figure out who Saw is and like where he's up to next and like what his apprentices are up to. And then you have like a subplot where there's people involved in traps, like the game. And then the two plots are happening like simultaneously. But with this one, it's very much linear. Like you start out with seeing John Kramer and like his cancer stuff, and then he sees like a potential treatment, so he flies all the way to Mexico. Spoiler alert: he gets scammed, and he never got his cancer removed. So he tries to find all the people that wronged him, all the liars and like people that were like involved in this larceny money scam. They pay like in typical Jigsaw fashion. The traps are some of the more gnarlier traps that we have. You got like intestines and eyeballs and brains. Like it's a lot of gory stuff here. They did not hold back. I think this is probably Tobin Bell's best portrayal of the Jigsaw character, like by far. Like he's the main character, so we spent a lot of time with him. So he's kind of like sympathetic in a way, as close to sympathetic as you can get with the guy like Jigsaw. And it really helps that all the people that wronged him are just like total scumbags, especially Cecilia, who's like the main like doctor chick who scams everybody. They managed to make her more unlikable than the literal serial killer. Now that in itself is an impressive feat. And then of course you can't have a Saw movie without a big twist in the end. And the twist here is not really like very twisty, not as like twisty like oh my god no way as like some of the sequels, but it's definitely one of the more satisfying twists. And it just proves that Jigsaw is always one step ahead. And then once the theme song hits the dun 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 dun, I literally got chills. I'm like, oh my god, bro, no way. Like, if you guys haven't seen Saw X already, I want you guys to see for yourself and see what the twist is. But like, wow, like they weren't lying. This really was the best one since the original. What is my number one of the year, you may ask? Well, it is none other than Talk to Me. Now, I already know some people in the comments are going to be like, oh, of course he has Talk to Me as his number one. Just like everyone else. Oh, just follow the crowd. Oh, the sheep. So overrated movie. Like, whatever. Have you ever thought about maybe it's just genuinely a really great movie and that's why everybody loves it? You ever thought about that? But nonetheless, yeah, like, believe the hype. The hype is warranted. It's really well made. Definitely one of the most well-made movies, horror movies, that I've seen in quite a while. And this is a directorial debut from a couple of YouTubers. That's a really cool like underdog story that just makes the movie so much better. Now, just like When Evil Lurks, this is a very unique interpretation, a unique take on like the whole possession subgenre. So it's treated as like a party game, and because of that, it's kind of like there's kind of like an allegory of like peer pressure and like how you do things at a party just to fit in with the crowd. And then like it may seem scary at first, but then like it becomes addictive and you try to get more and more and more of it, and then in the end it does not go well when somebody gets hurt. Like, yeah, just a lot of comparisons with peer pressure and like The Hand in the movie. It's really cool. It's really well done without really feeling like preachy or ham-fisted. I mean, the images here are really pretty creepy, and like some of the stuff that they show here is pretty brutal. Like really, really brutal. Like more brutal than like Evil Dead Rise. So if you're living under a rock and you haven't seen Talk to Me yet, what are you doing? Go check out Talk to Me. Really fun movie, and it's my personal favorite horror movie of 2023. And that's gonna be it for today's video, ladies and gentlemen. Again, it's different from my usual Halloween Horror Nights fare, but it's a little bit something different. And if you guys like what you saw, I would love to hear some feedback. You know, like if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and leave a comment or just leave a like in the video. If you want to see more horror-oriented content, or if you want to see more Halloween content, or just like movie content in general, go ahead and click the subscribe button. If you stuck around to the very end of the video, thank you so much for watching, and have a happy new year.